All right, here we go again. Sunday Speaks. This is the Floyd, the George Floyd murder and aftermath episode I'm doing. Your Voice Matters. And today with me, I have one of my colleagues, friends, and a brother in the struggle, I believe. I know he a different color brother, but I believe he a soul brother nonetheless. So I'm gonna let him introduce himself.
I appreciate that, Clarence. My name is Cody Bestgrip. I'm actually co-worker at Clarence. I just started at CYC about a year and a half ago. But yeah, I mean, I think that, it might not be affecting me as intensely as some of the folks that we know, but I'm definitely feeling it too.
Yeah, we all feeling it. That's what's up. So let's just jump in, Cody. Tell me, I mean, what are you feeling? I mean, I don't know if you saw the video, if you've been involved in the protest, you think the protest is good or bad. Tell me all your thoughts, your feelings, where you at.
All right, cool. So I know that we had that little like text discussion a couple of weeks ago before we did the check in with the kids and stuff like that. And I know that I said that I might have a very different opinion about all this stuff than everyone. And I didn't mean that as in like, I don't know, like the typical white response of like, oh, don't destroy the. I was kind of like more on the side of, like I noticed Roberta was saying like, oh, we've been through this before, and some of the older staff was like, yeah, I've seen this happen once or twice before.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I mean, it didn't work, obviously. So, the young people are just trying something different.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna condemn them from wanting to go out and voice themselves in the way that they were taught and know how.
Yeah.
So they didn't just, come up with the idea themselves, like, oh, let's go loot stuff, let's go do this. They got it from somewhere, whether it be their environment or it, be stuff that they see on TV or whatever. But I mean, that's the reality that we live in. And like, I don't want to say that like, too bad, so sad that's happening, but like, we're seeing as a society what we've done to young people to make them react in the ways that they did. So I don't blame them at all. And I don't think it's necessarily like an awful thing that they're doing that. And then I know that a lot of the narrative is saying in response, like, you shouldn't be, wrecking your own neighborhoods and destroying the stuff that you have. But I just recently saw this interesting video. This woman was comparing everything that's going on to like a Monopoly game.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, imagine that you had 400 rounds of Monopoly where you didn't get to play. That's like the plight of Black people. And then for the next 50 rounds of Monopoly, you did get to play, but everything you had to give over to your opponent. You know what I mean? So I just thought that was a really interesting analogy.
Yeah, Monopoly get treacherous.
Yeah,
and it's just a game. People start throwing pieces and stuff. So I can see where that would get vital. That would get ugly.
yeah, man. It was an interesting way to think about it. But going back to my point, I just think that this method of expression shouldn't really be like, I don't know, like condemned so bad as it is. I mean, personally, I would never go out and loot and destroy stuff, but that's just because I feel like I grew up a little different and I like take approaches to things a little bit differently. But I didn't like how some of our staff members were like saying you shouldn't do that and you should instead do this or get an education and stop destroying stuff. Like, I don't know. I think that everyone has a right to their own expression, within reason. Like, I don't think it's nice to go out and start killing people or anything like that. But I think the point of the looting and the destruction was like, see how much people care about material things over a human's life. And we should be changing the narrative of, instead of, oh, look how, I saw a quote, it said something about like, you got to change the narrative from, it's a shame that Black man died, but don't be destroying stuff. And instead, we should be saying, it's a shame we're destroying stuff, but we shouldn't be killing Black men in our society.
Yeah.
It really resonated with me, just because I think that we're losing focus on what's really important, and I just don't think it's material goods and property that's more important than lives.
Yeah, you know, when you wrote that in the chat, I think I hit you up on text because I didn't think your response was going to be. I thought your response was going to be more like what I hear you saying now. You know,
Hmm.
and I too was reluctant to not state my response, but it was so emotional, and people were feeling. I think that they felt more attacked. That, like you saying, that the Walgreens got torn down, or I got to go an extra block or so to the bank, and I get it. You know what I'm saying? Um, I think they felt more attacked by that than they did um, a human life. That's my.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to judge them, but again, when you speak of narratives, these narratives. I was talking to a friend, and she kept talking about her business, her business, her business. I'm like, look, it beats being dead. You know what I'm saying? I get it that I wouldn't want my grandmother not to have her blood pressure medicine, or I wouldn't want a family of four to have to go hungry because the grocery store that's closest to them is closed down because of vandalism and looting. However, you know, it's like speaking French to a person who speaks Japanese. I mean, America
Mhm.
speaks basically two languages, money and the image. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not attacking one of those things or using that as a leveraging chip, I'm not sure if you're going to get their attention. You know, I'm
Yeah.
sure this would have died out in the wind to some degree if it wouldn't have been for protest. And unfortunately, it probably would have died out in the news cycle if we wouldn't have spent the last weekend looting and vandalism. You know, if it bleeds, it leads. This kind of stuff stay at the forefront of the paper. So people are saying, "What's going on in Chicago?" So that opens up a conversation for what's going on. Well, why are they doing that? That opens up a conversation about protesting. What they protesting about? That opens up a conversation of this habitual attack on black people that the police seem to be motivated by. They seem to be committed to it more than, unfortunately, law and justice or law and order, whichever one they say um, they own. So I feel you on that. But I was a little bit like, well, I'm not condoning burning nobody building down. However, it wasn't my brother, my son. I've had very little few interactions with the law. I work with kids. Some of them have been traumatized by the police. They hate the police. They've been, in their perspective, they've been targeted. They've been abused. They've had guns put to their head. And I've seen some of this personally. I've seen kids um, harassed by the police, straight up, you know. And so to have that same group of people, you figure out a way that you can, quote unquote, get them back, or this is the way I can leash some vengeance. I mean, it's not the method I would have chose, but I don't know if you can pick somebody's a way for them to be angry or to protest.
Yeah, and that was sort of my point. It's like, that's the direction they grew into, and you know, it sucks that that has to be their response for people that it affects, like in terms of the business owners and stuff.
Yeah,
Um, but like I said, unfortunately, that's the way that society has kind of geared people to be in general.
yeah,
Like it's to be really like hateful of others for whatever reason they can find. It seems like
yeah,
it's a weird dichotomy because, like how you were saying, it's people weren't personally affected, but you know, if it was some of the staff members, you know, child that this happened to, I'm sure they wouldn't have the same feelings about, you know, the buildings being burnt in their neighborhood.
yeah,
On the flip side of that, it's like, what if one of their businesses that was in like the family for generations like went up in smoke and then they lost everything?
yeah,
It's like, you know, it's difficult on all angles,
yeah,
and I'm not going to blame anyone for feeling the way that they are, whether it's, you know, on the side of they should be burning or they shouldn't, or they should be looting or they shouldn't, because it's, to me it's about time that people just, you know, be who they are, and if that's the way that expression is coming across, like that should be the indicator of like, okay, we got to change stuff for real this time. And I think that, you know, seeing that this is what the biggest civil rights movement in history, right, with all 50 states and 18 other countries involved,
right,
um, I think that says something. I think that hopefully something actually changes for the better with this. And, you know, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's time to wake up a little bit.
Yeah.
And, I just seen a lot of stuff on social media, especially my hometown, Philly.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that's the worst city in the U.S. right now with the police brutality. I've seen
Really? Worse than
videos.
here?
What's up?
It's worse than here, Philly?
I mean, maybe it's just because I have a ton of friends still on social media from Philly, but I'm seeing stuff left and right about, in the news, how stuff is really bad over there. So
Wow.
it's worse or not.
It's hard to imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I hear you talking about this call for police reform, and I know that most of us probably couldn't even imagine, specifically in Black and brown communities, what it would look like to be unpoliced,
Mm-hmm.
So let me just talk a little bit about that. What would your vision of a different type of police reform? They said, we're going to bring Cody to the table, and these are the things that we're going to implement in our new structure.
Cool. So I'm glad you actually brought that up, because that's something that my girl and I were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, she believes that there's 1000% the possibility of any culture and society and community perfectly capable of policing themselves, because they within themselves know their value and what they strive for as a culture or a community or society. So they would know what's at the priority of those individuals and those things to like approach. So basically, just a simple example, I guess, if you had, say we just took like our kids, for example,
Mm-hmm.
They really like, the different clubs we do, the different programs that we run. Say they start misbehaving in a program, the way that we would police them is, I believe that there should be like for the first time, there should be kind of just like not really consequence for the first time offense, but like if they did something really bad, just like have them be talked to and explain like that's not appropriate, and like these are the consequences moving forward, and maybe explain that like you won't be able to participate in this program, or you're not going to be able to hang out with your friends for as long or whatever.
Okay.
We need to take like a strengths-based approach to discipline, where it's like we find out what they value, and we kind of either make restrictions on that or like suspend it or something like that, versus like, I studied criminal justice in college, and I saw a lot about how jail and solitary confinement especially is intuitive for trying to rehabilitate people, and it actually psychotic and stuff like that, and it's really interesting to see that. Another point that I thought was really interesting was states that have the death penalty are actually shown to have higher rates of murder versus lower, because you would think you're scared like to have the death penalty,
right?
Don't do that, but actually what the studies show is that if a state shows that it's okay to kill people, the people living in that state believe the same thing.
It's okay to kill people.
So that's super interesting. So basically what I'm trying to say is I think we need to set examples as a, we're not a policing entity or anything, but I think we got to set the bar for what we're doing is what's appropriate and what isn't. And we can only surround the kids with so much, positive activity until they, merge with other groups and cultures and stuff like that that aren't, the same. But I think that people rely too much on the police's intervention to think it's not their job, when I think it really is the job of any community leader, especially, but just any community member in general, to have responsibility of, we got to make where we live and the people we interact with feel responsible for the actions and hold them accountable. So I don't know. I don't really know exactly what it looks like to answer your question. I definitely believe it's possible.
Yeah.
You just got to take the initiative as individuals to have that responsibility, versus just being like, oh, well, there's police out there, they're going to take care of everything. And, to take it one step further, police wasn't even a thing until after, slavery was abolished, to keep that separation, under the lines. People don't really know that. think that it takes a lot more research for the average person, a lot more, studying of history to see what's actually going on and why the things that are in place. And yeah, I just think that more educated world, and a better sense of community is definitely necessary.
Yeah.
And I think that, thinking about it now, maybe one of the solutions is like, you know, have community events more often in different places. Maybe that could be set up by, I don't know, like some kind of council for the cities or something like that. But I just think that if you have more interaction with others of your community, it'll like entice you to want to be like more positive and have a better impact on other people. Because I think that people are inherently good, and I totally believe that 1,000%. So I don't know. It just confuses me. I think I get more confused than angry when I see violence happening and all this hate, because people don't have to be like that. So I don't know if it's just a learned helplessness type of thing or what's going on, but I think that people can be good. We just got to show them how. And I think there are generations that maybe there's not as much hope, but I think that really does start with the young people. And it seems like they're setting a good example, like being out there protesting. Maybe not an example by burning stuff down, but like I said, that's a result of where they have like the environment they're growing up in. But I think that things are going to change with the younger people coming up for sure.
What you're talking about reminds me of two books I read. One of them is No Future Without Forgiveness by Bishop Tutu. And after the massacres and the violence and the murders took place during apartheid in South Africa, in order to get the country back together, they created basically a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And these group of people was like, look, we need to basically create a restorative justice program for our country so that people who committed wrong, one, can be rejoined to the bigger community, but also that the truth about what's going on could come out. But these people weren't charged with anything. They didn't get a chance. They weren't going to go to jail. They just went before if they decided to do it, they had to come before this commission and just tell the straight up truth. People's family members were missing. They hadn't seen them in a year. They had to tell exactly what they did. And then that was it. So some people loved it. They was like, yeah, at least we get some closure. And some people was like, no, I want these people to pay. Bishop Tutu felt this is the only way we're going to move forward. This is the only way we can move forward. And then on a more a fictional way, I read this book by Pearl, I think it's Pearl Cleaves or Pearl Clay, I don't know how to say it. And she writes these like almost Afrofuturism books. And in this one community, there was a guy in Atlanta. He had one little book we probably would consider here a neighborhood that he basically had on lock. And if anything went wrong in that neighborhood, then nobody called the police. They called him, and he dealt with it. And everybody knew him, and he would put hands on you, but they knew that if something went wrong, then you was gonna have to deal with him. And you would have to leave that community if you broke any of their agreed upon rules. So, yeah, I think we really gotta really reimagine what it would look like to have at least a less abrasive police force,
Yeah, definitely. I think that to both of our point, what we're trying to get at is kind of like I said, we need to take what the people that we're trying to police value and flip it to, people don't really respect the police because of all the stuff that's going on. And I think that we need to take something they do value or respect and make that, what the discipline is centered around or something like that. Because like you said, like they call in this dude that was super respected in the community, and like he was the one who took care of it, and no one questioned it,
Yeah, I mean, I saw a post today like you on Facebook, and it was like, well, if we can imagine a world with flying cars or cars that don't have a driver, of course we have the imagination to reimagine police reform. Yeah. So what do you think about CPS or this push toward removing Chicago Police Department police officers out of Chicago public schools?
So I think that there never should have been police in schools. And going back to what I was saying about studying criminal justice in college a little bit, I don't know like at what age like the police can intervene with the kids, like what age the kids can be or whatever. But I know that like you can't even charge certain kids for certain crimes based on their like mental age, something like that. So basically like if a kid doesn't know what he's doing is wrong, you can't legally charge him with a crime because they were like not actually aware. And that's where the whole thing about charging Black youth as adults like into play. Like I think that's ridiculous that happens. I can't really think of any examples or anything like that.
Yeah, but we had some kids who were charged as adults many times in history. And one of them was an African American male, little boy from my hometown. He was like 11, and he had been in constant contact with the police even before he was 11, and then he eventually shot a man, and they charged him as an adult, right? And so he ended up spending a large portion of time, I want to say about 10 plus years, in prison or some kind of child detention center. And eventually, when he came out, like you're talking about, he just unraveled. So he was in and out of jail as an adult, and I'm not sure what happened to him, but there's some other, that may be a sign of something deeper going on, that we can get some people some psychological, some mental help, some support systems, some value systems as you speaking to, as opposed to just, taking an 11-year-old and writing them off basically for the rest of their life,
Yeah. And another thing too is, so my mom and my stepdad are both in the education field. They were teachers, principals, like higher than that in terms of like the school board and stuff like that. They always talked about how, some kids can't eat or don't get enough sleep or are like abused at home and stuff like that. And so that in terms of their hierarchy of needs takes a priority over like to learn, you know what I mean? And I think I just draw a similarity to that in some kids are really terrified of the police because of all the stuff they see. You're going to focus on your studies if you got someone that you think is basically a terrorist walking down the hallway, like trolling all the time. Like, I think that really upsets the balance of uncomfortability that needs to be had within a school for someone to be in the right mindset to even learn. So I've never thought that it was a good thing to have police in schools. And I mean, like you want to feel safe and everything, but I think that there's like a really delicate balance that needs to be had between like feeling safe and feeling locked down, because that feeling of like anxiety that comes with knowing there's all that power and authority there just like incites like some kind of equal like feeling of there needs to be something that's going on. Like,
I agree. And the last conversation I had, the young lady, me and the young lady was saying, how do we know that the police presence isn't also creating the anxiety, the tension that you're talking about? And so now it's like, bam, I've had some bad dealings with cops, and I've seen them do bad stuff to me and my family. So their presence puts me on edge. And so now I'm going to be acting up in school, because of course I'm probably not going to do nothing to a police officer if I'm a 10-year-old boy, but that don't mean I'm not going to do something to you, to release. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So these are the kind of conversations I think we need to have so that we can, again, just think outside of the box. And I'm not saying schools don't need security. I'm saying that a police officer takes it to a different level, which could bring criminality into the picture as opposed to just discipline. You know what I'm saying? It's one thing to expel 2 days for school for blah, blah, blah. It's another thing to get a felony. You know what I mean? And then you 12 and got that on your whatever. And so I'm with you. But I think we got to sit around at these tables, and people like you and I who work directly with kids, I think we have the perfect advantage to sit with kids, have these conversations, and start pushing this reform.
I agree. I think that we need to make a point to see that there really is a difference between discipline and punishment, because I think discipline really is the positive outcome, and the punishment is more like a negative, like you're bad for doing this versus, hey, that was bad, but you're not a bad person.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think that there just needs to be a whole, before we can even have like a shift in the operations, we have to have a mind shift towards what's really important.
yeah. Like you said, go back to values. Find a person's values, and those values is what we use to, um, I guess, punish and reward to some degree. But that would be a beautiful thing. So you got some closing remarks. What would you like to say in closing about where do we go from here? What is the next step?
So I think that personally, actually, I want to like, I sort of want to relinquish like my personal desire to want to affect my change, because no matter how I spin it, there's going to be someone that disagrees. But I think it really is in the power and the hands of the Black people, Black cultures, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that they're the ones that really need to say what they think needs to happen next
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
the George Floyd's murder. It's kind of interesting because I felt myself getting really like amped up and like really affected by what was going on, and I realized like I'm not even someone of the same community
Right.
in terms of my skin color. So
Right.
I felt like I can only imagine like it's probably way more than even 10 times what I'm feeling for someone that doesn't look like me.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to take myself off of the pedestal and give it to someone else that needs
Mm-hmm.
a point.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And it's interesting because I felt, even when we were doing that meeting with the staff, I felt like myself being told to be quiet and be silenced because I need to listen. And although like all I was doing was relaying things that I've heard from, different people, including African American people say, uh, it's just like no matter what I say or wish, I think there's always going to be opposition just because of the color of my skin. So I think that it needs to be put in the hands of the people that the change is for. And while I think that it's white people's responsibility to end racism, because that's where it starts,
Mm-hmm.
I think the people that should say where they want it to go are the people that are being affected by it. So it's a weird like
No,
flip.
that make perfect sense to me. And in every movement, I'm gonna say in closing, like this, specifically with African Americans, we've always had white allies or non-black allies. Amish people helped hide slaves that were running away in parts of their house that were like hidden. And so that's why this becomes a human rights issue. You know what I'm saying? It becomes more than just, it is affecting black people. We're going to feel the brunt of it. But at the end of the day, to watch a video of a man being just murdered on live is like that's traumatizing to the whole community. For your son, for my brother, for your mother, and for mothers to hear that a guy yells out for his mother that's heart wrenching. And so I'm glad that we can be allies in this. So,
Sure.
all right, almost done.